As the grieving mother walked up to her son's coffin for one final goodbye, the church fell silent. But as she looked inside, she stumbled back, gasping in horror. Her son's eyes were wide open, and they were moving. It was a stormy Thursday night when the news came. Daniel Thompson, a bright and soft-spoken 17-year-old boy, had been found dead inside his wrecked car on the outskirts of town. The vehicle had veered off a deserted country road and flipped into a muddy ditch, the headlights still faintly glowing when a passing truck driver discovered it. Police arrived quickly and concluded it was a tragic but straightforward accident. Daniel had supposedly lost control in the rain. Case closed. But for Claire, Daniel's mother, nothing about it made sense. Her son was an extremely cautious driver. He hated the rain, avoided night drives, and never took that remote road through the woods. That wasn't like him. In fact, he had told her earlier that week that he wasn't feeling well and planned to stay in all weekend. So why was he out there? And why at that time? As Claire stared at the crumpled car in the impound lot the next day, a chill ran down her spine. The front seat was soaked in water and mud. But what caught her eye was the deep scratch marks on the inside of the windshield. It looked like someone had been trying to claw their way out. But the authorities dismissed it, saying they were likely from tree branches or debris during the crash. Claire tried to believe them, but a mother always knows. And something deep in her heart told her. Her son hadn't died in an accident. He had been running from something. Or worse, someone. The night before the funeral, Claire sat alone in Daniel's bedroom, surrounded by his untouched belongings. His favorite hoodie still hung on the back of the chair. His phone, however, was never recovered from the crash. At least, that's what the police said. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Claire's phone buzzed. Incoming call. Daniel. Her heart stopped. She stared at the screen, frozen. It had to be a mistake. Maybe someone spoofing his number? A glitch. She hesitantly answered. Hello. At first, silence. Then came the sound of heavy breathing, slow and labored, like someone gasping for air. Then a strange noise, like scratching. Fingernails dragging across a hard surface. Daniel, she whispered, her voice trembling. No response. Just breathing. And that eerie scratching sound. Then the call abruptly ended. Claire sat there, stunned, her hands shaking. She checked the call log. It had lasted 38 seconds. She reported it to the police, but they dismissed it as a cruel prank or a technical error. But Claire knew her son's breathing. She had listened to him sleep for years. That was him. And the scratching. It sounded like it was coming from inside a box. What terrified her most was the realization that maybe Daniel wasn't dead when they put him in that coffin. Maybe he had been calling for help. The day of the funeral was cold, gray, and silent, like the world itself was mourning. Friends and family gathered in the small town chapel, each person weighed down by grief. But Claire, she wasn't just grieving. She was haunted. That phone call kept replaying in her mind. Daniel's coffin had remained sealed until that morning. The funeral home insisted everything had been handled professionally. Embalmed, prepared, dressed in his favorite suit. But when Claire asked to see her son one last time before the ceremony began, the mortician hesitated. It's best to remember him how he was, he said, avoiding her eyes. But Claire insisted. Finally, the coffin was wheeled into a private side room. The lid creaked open slowly, and Claire stepped forward, bracing herself for the pain. At first, all she saw was Daniel's peaceful face. His skin was pale, lips slightly parted, hands folded neatly. But as she leaned in, something caught her eye. His eyelids were trembling. She blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light. But then his eyes opened. Why? And they moved. Claire gasped, stumbling backward, knocking over a vase of white lilies. A high-pitched scream escaped her lips, drawing others into the room. Chaos erupted. The mortician ran to the coffin, looked inside, and went pale as a sheet. "This isn't possible," he muttered. I stitched his eyes shut myself. More people rushed in, gasping in horror. Someone fainted. A few backed away in fear. The room turned into a scene of pure panic. But when they looked again, Daniel's eyes were closed, peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Everyone said Claire was under too much stress, hallucinating, seeing what she wanted or feared to see. But Claire knew what she saw. Her son blinked, and in that fleeting moment, she was certain Daniel was trying to say something. Something he couldn't say with words. The day after the funeral, Claire couldn't sleep. Her hands still trembled from what she'd seen. The image of Daniel's blinking eyes haunted her every time she closed hers. She needed answers. Ignoring the pleas of family members to rest, Claire drove to the funeral home that night. She demanded an independent autopsy. At first, they resisted, but her desperation was fierce, unrelenting. Finally, they gave in. When the medical examiner reopened the coffin, what he discovered shook everyone to the core. There were deep scratch marks on the inside of the coffin lid. Not just random ones, organized, desperate clawing like someone had been trapped and trying to escape. Daniel's fingertips were bruised and bloody beneath the carefully arranged hands. His fingernails had fragments of wood under them, pieces of splinters and fabric. Even worse, the second autopsy revealed something the first had either missed or covered up. Daniel's lungs contained small traces of oxygen. Not the empty, collapsed lungs of a long-dead body, but ones that had breathed recently. The conclusion: Daniel had been buried alive. Claire broke down. Her screams echoed through the cold walls of the morgue. Her son hadn't died in that car crash. He had survived it, injured, unconscious maybe, but alive. And someone had buried him anyway. Whether it was a terrible mistake or something far darker, she didn't know. But one thing was now terrifyingly clear. Daniel died screaming, and no one heard him. Or worse, someone did hear him and buried him anyway. Still numb from the horrifying autopsy results, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something beyond human error, something sinister. A few days later, she received a call from the tow yard where Daniel's car had been taken. They had finally completed the inspection and found something wedged deep beneath the driver's seat. Daniel's phone. Claire drove there immediately, clutching the mud-covered device like it was a piece of her son's soul. Amazingly, the phone powered on. Cracked, water damaged, but still working. As she scrolled through the gallery, her breath caught. There was a video, one she had never seen before, timestamped just 1 hour before the crash. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. The footage began with Daniel sitting in his car, clearly scared. His voice was a whisper, shaky and breathless. "I don't know what this is. I left the house. I think it's following me. I saw it in the rearview mirror. It has no face, just skin, stretched tight like a mask. It doesn't walk. It floats. I'm driving as fast as I can, but it's still there." He glances in the mirror, and the camera shakes violently as the car swerves. Oh God, it's in the back seat. The screen goes black. A loud crash. Then, nothing but static and distant whispering. Claire dropped the phone. Her blood ran cold. Her son hadn't died in a random accident. He hadn't just been buried alive. Something hunted him. Something inhuman. And it had gotten inside the car. Weeks had passed since the funeral, but Claire couldn't move on. She stopped sleeping, barely ate, and spent her days replaying that video, trying to freeze frames, catch glimpses of whatever thing had been in the back seat. But one morning, As she arrived at the cemetery with fresh flowers, she froze. Daniel's grave was open, not dug up by machines, not vandalized. The earth was clawed away from the inside, as if someone or something had crawled out. The coffin was shattered, empty. Claire fell to her knees, sobbing, screaming for help. Cemetery staff rushed over, but none could explain it. There were no security camera recordings, no signs of trespassing, just the ruined grave. And something even more disturbing. On the headstone, freshly etched by claws, were the words, "He belongs to me now." Claire knew in that moment. It wasn't just a haunting. It was a possession. Daniel hadn't been taken by death. He had been claimed by something far darker. And now it had him. Forever.